Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Nick and Gio. We just got back from our week-long trip up to Sapa in the mountains of northern Vietnam. We just wanted to record a quick little walking tour where we talk about some of the pros, some of the cons, and just our overall experience here in Sapa. So as you can see here, we're walking around the main town area of Sapa. It's got these beautiful, beautiful French village, kind of these French village architecture styles, the crazy colors, little stands all over the place. It was super beautiful. It was definitely one of the more beautiful places we've seen in Vietnam so far. Don't you think, Gio?
Yeah, I definitely loved the mountains. It was so beautiful seeing the mountains over the city.
Mhm.
Just up here around the corner, you'll be able to see the mountains overlooking the city.
Yeah, I think it was like that combination of the beautiful mountains, like that beautiful scenery that you would kind of expect in Sapa. But then what really caught me off guard was was how beautiful the actual city itself was. Like honestly, in my opinion, you could put this city in a pretty like lackluster terrain and it would still be a tourist attraction in itself. And that's something that I feel like most people aren't highlighting and a big reason why we wanted to make this video. Like if you look to the left right here, you can see this beautiful yellow building. I think it was like an old railway station or something, but it's got that classic French architecture. But the light or the not the lights, but the colors are a little bit more vibrant than what you would expect in Paris, and it gives you this really, really cool contrast, and it's just so beautiful. Every day we would take long walks around this little area and just be blown away by the sheer beauty of the nature and the city itself.
Yeah, I feel like when you look at videos of Sapa, Vietnam, I think a lot of people emphasize on going to the other towns, the surrounding towns, like
Mhm.
what is it called,
The
Cat Ba
Cat Ba,
Village.
Lao Kai, I think is another one.
Yeah. But honestly, like the city itself in Sapa was gorgeous, and honestly, like it was just as cool as the mountains outside of the city.
Yeah, I think if you're not like if the big city amenities that you're gonna find in Ho Chi Minh or Da Nang or Hanoi aren't like a top priority for you, if you're willing to get more off the beaten path and maybe not have millions of things to do, but just be in like a really, really beautiful place, I think Sapa is a great choice to base yourself out of as a digital nomad.
We had just came from Hanoi, and I think in comparison, like with the price differences, we could definitely tell that things were a little bit more steep in Sapa in comparison to Hanoi.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was probably one of the bigger issues that we had with it. I mean, of course, it's still in Vietnam, so if you're making a Western salary, it's still going to be affordable. But it's a little bit difficult because when you're in Hanoi, I mean, you can just throw a rock out your front door and you'll land next to an amazing street food restaurant where you can get just world-class meals for just a few dollars. You go to Sapa, you're gonna pay probably about double what you're gonna pay in Hanoi, and the quality usually is gonna be about half as good. So there's a lot more vetting that has to go into the restaurants that you choose. Whereas in Hanoi, pretty much anywhere you go, you're gonna get a good meal, and I think a lot of that is due to the huge level of competition that you get in the big city of Hanoi, right? It's like New York City or Chicago or big cities like that. If your food isn't good, you're going to go out of business. Where in Sapa, there's much less competition. So we noticed that the food quality on average was lower. But of course, there was still amazing restaurants all over the city. You just had to look a little harder to find them.
We actually managed to find one of our favorite Western food places in Vietnam here in Sapa. We found a place that sold, what was it?
Can't remember what it was called, but it was like a really eclectic menu they had. Basically, just anything you could imagine Western they had. I know a lot of people kind of push back on digital nomads or tourists. Who see that huge hole right there? I almost fell in that. But people like to push back on tourists trying Western food or enjoying Western food. But I don't know. I thought it was very, very good at this place, and it was different enough from what we had back in the United States that it was still honestly, it felt new, but like, it was delicious. I think every morning I would get a big order of fries and this like caprese style sandwich. But what really made it the best was that you still had that Vietnamese style bread, like that banh mi, that French baguette, and it was just delicious. Like you go to the U.S. and you get a sandwich, you're gonna get a basic piece of bread, but here, just the ingredients, they all tasted much fresher, and we went there every day. Get like $1.25 paninis. What did you end up getting, Gia?
I had an omelet, and it was definitely cheaper than American food in Hanoi. I think in Hanoi, American food or Western food, they go they ease on the expensive side.
Yeah, that was one thing that I definitely noticed being in Hanoi. Like anything that was even remotely close to Western food was very expensive, but for some reason the Vietnamese food was very cheap in Hanoi. But here in Sapa, it seemed like the Vietnamese food was really expensive, and the Western food was in a lot of places, but we found a couple like hidden gem spots that were really good. And honestly, once we got in that comfortable routine, we just went to the same stores and the same restaurants time and time again because let's face it, if you're going to Sapa, you're not going as like a culinary experience or for like the the types of things that you would go to a bigger city for. You're going to enjoy the nature and just to soak in these just incredible views. I mean, you can just see in the video right here. We're on just a basic street, and it's just absolutely beautiful. This scenery right here is so much more beautiful than anything else we've seen in Hanoi, and easily made the trip worth it, in my opinion.
And you can even see the mountain kind of peeking over the town now a little bit.
Yeah, I think we picked an excellent day to record this video. A lot of the times that we were there, it was just super foggy, which kind of adds like an interesting effect when you're there, but does not make for great videos.
Here around the city center area, more so, it was interesting. You'll find a lot of minority groups that are trying to sell you things. So that was one thing that we had to kind of weave around when you're walking around the city center.
Yeah, and it's a little bit sad sometimes because you'll see a lot of very young kids, sometimes by themselves, and they have these like it's really impressive, honestly, how they're able to have these like it's like a backpack scarf type of thing where it's tied around them, and so you'll have like a 4-year-old who has like 2 containers of souvenirs that they're selling, and they all kind of sell the same sort of souvenirs, and then they'll have like an infant on their back, um, and it doesn't really make sense how they're able to hold it all up, but they never drop it. At least I've never seen them drop it. But yeah, that's something to keep in mind. And that was there was a couple little incidents like that that made us a little bit uncomfortable. Like I remember we were walking down one of the side streets one night, and there was just like an infant. I don't know. What do you think? It couldn't have been more than 6, 7 months old.
Oh yeah, the it was like
A year and a half tops
yeah.
at the absolute max. I don't think it was even close to a year, honestly. Um, all by herself. With just she had like a little cup for money and then a cup of souvenirs, which I mean shows you the safety of Vietnam, right? That they would leave um, the things that they're selling outside and their kid and not worry about it being stolen. But just the idea of a little kid sitting alone on a sidewalk with, I mean, if you've ever been to Southeast Asia, or, and particularly Vietnam, people drive motorcycles all over the place. I mean, you can see it in the video now, but this is one of the lighter traffic times. They're all over the place, though. Certainly not a place that you'd want to have a little baby just sitting by themselves. And that was super sad. And honestly, one of the biggest reasons why we never would buy anything from those people that were selling them outside, just because, I don't know, you don't really want to encourage that. But I will say also that a lot of the things that they were selling were seemed to be like they were very beautiful. And it was a lot higher quality than some of the things that you'll get. Like when you're in Hanoi, you'll sit down in a restaurant and people will come over and try to sell you gum or little things like that. The things that they try to sell you in Sapa are super beautiful, but we never bought anything just because, seeing all those little kids out there, it was just something that we weren't exactly comfortable with supporting.
Hmm. And I think Vietnam even has advised tourists in the area to not um, buy things from the groups as well.
Yeah, and I think if you want to support those groups, like I think that that's great, and I think there's a lot of like better ways that you could do it. Like I would, if you're going to do like a trekking tour or something like that, I would maybe do some research and try to book with like the people that were actually indigenous to the area, because of course you're going to get a more authentic experience if they have multi-generational families in these mountains. And that's, in my opinion at least, that's a much more ethical way of supporting the local economy in a way that's not promoting like little kids being outside all day. But yeah, enough about all of that. Now we're we're getting closer to the lake, and this lake is honestly one of the most beautiful parts of Sapa. And I know that we've said most beautiful probably 27 times by now, but I think as you can see, it just is. It's an incredibly beautiful place. Like you've got just this amazing lake, you've got amazing mountains, you've got an amazing city. It's just really, really, really worth going to visit, even if it's just for a couple days.
After being in the super congested city of Hanoi, this was such a refreshing break. Just being in the mountain air, everything was so crisp and clean.
Yeah, it was like if you're just wanting to get like an amazing retreat, Sapa's perfect. But now we're going to go into a little bit of the drawbacks, or maybe not necessarily drawbacks, but some of the things that you need to be aware of that we were not aware of. The first thing is that if you're worried about being a digital nomad in Sapa because of internet in the mountains, there's no need to be. It's not like the US where if you're out in the Smokies or maybe like West Virginia where internet is going to be a real issue. It's very easy to get 100 plus megabits a second internet pretty much anywhere in Vietnam. We were in like what could only be described as a shack, and we had excellent internet, and our jobs require really, really good internet, and we had no issues with it. So I think that that's something that if that's your main blocker for going to Sapa, don't worry about it.
And just do your research, honestly. Like our Airbnb, we didn't do a whole lot of research. You know, mountains are a whole lot colder with the altitude. Our Airbnb didn't have heat, so certainly be aware of that when it becomes colder at night.
Absolutely. And then another thing too, like if you're booking on Airbnb, don't feel like you're bugging them by asking a lot of follow-up questions. Like just know, like we got what we view as a great deal. We paid about $100 for the week, which is a great deal for like our Western mind. But paying $400 a month for like a one-room kind of like studio shack style apartment in the mountains is much, much, much higher than what they would be getting like in the local market. And so it's totally reasonable for you to be like, hey, can you send me screenshots of the internet? And we never have had any pushback with hosts sending like proof that the internet was really good for working or really anything else we've ever asked. I think that's one of the biggest pros of Vietnam is that the locals are always going to be super, super helpful. And they all seem to really go out of their way to make your experience as a tourist as good as possible.
Our Airbnb, we ran into a few problems, especially living out in the middle of nowhere, a little bit on the outskirts of the city.
About
We
20 minutes
had
up in the mountains.
Yeah, we had a few critters in our house. We found a rat, and then we also had a cute little tree frog that joined us underneath our sink. If you'd like to check out that video, we already have that video posted. It's our Sapa apartment tour.
Yeah, we had all kinds of those like crazy little critters. Like honestly, a tree frog infestation is not something we had even considered, honestly. But I will say, or I'm not gonna go too far into detail about like all the things that happened because we already made a video about that, or we already talked about that in our apartment tour. But I will say again that our Airbnb host was absolutely incredible for resolving it all. He did the best he could as quickly as possible, and even let us get our motorbike rental for free for the day. But yeah, like that leads us into the last thing that I really, really wanted to touch on before wrapping up this video is that if you don't have motorbike experience, do not make your first time renting it up in the mountains of Sapa. It's such a terrible idea. And like Vietnam is a place where if you have money, they will give you the motorbike. They don't really care if you have a license. You don't need to read any online rules. Like you just, if you have the money, which is about 100,000 dong a day, um, they're going to give you your bike. And that's not the best idea if you don't know how to do it because we got ours and we had absolutely no idea how to drive it and we almost killed ourselves trying to learn how to bike in the mountains. Me and Gia both gave it like 5 or 6 tries and we almost drove off into these like rice paddies because we lived like way up on a hill and on the left side was like a big ditch, on the right side was just cliff leading into rice paddies. Our road was maybe what, I don't know, what do you think, Gia? 2, 3, maybe 4 feet wide at most.
Yeah.
And well, first of all, it took us 30 minutes to figure out how to turn the thing on.
It was so
It
embarrassing.
was so embarrassing. And all these Vietnamese people would walk by and they just looked at us like we were just like the dumbest kids in school. But eventually we kind of mastered that. And then just as we started to get comfortable, we ended up running out of gas. Because a lot of these rental companies, they're not going to fill up the gas, which in my opinion, like it doesn't really make any sense. Like charge me a little bit more, but give me enough gas to get to the gas station. I don't know. Like the closest gas station was like 2 miles away, and they left it to us with maybe a half mile worth of gas. So these are all things to ask. Like if you're going to rent a bike, say how much gas is going to be in there. Can you bring extra gas, or how close is the nearest gas station, and can I make it to that place?
And definitely don't begin your motorbike journey on the side of a mountain going down a 90-degree angle
Or do
turn.
because we did, and it turned out all right. So I mean, I guess.
It did not turn out all right. We just quit.
Well, we got some footage though that makes it look like we were doing better than we actually were. So, you know, what Instagram sees is what happened. And so right here, you see we're walking across this kind of like bridge situation. This place is absolutely beautiful at night. They light it up all very beautifully. You'll see a lot of like teenagers and stuff on like first dates, just hanging out, walking around. Very, very social part of the city, and a place that we found ourselves going all the time. Like in the middle of work, we would walk down from our apartment, which was maybe a half an hour walk from here, and just kind of enjoy the scenery, enjoy the lights. Because what's really cool about Sapa is that you get all of the beautiful like Asian nightlife, just like the crazy light shows that you see on like TikTok and stuff, like things that are very foreign to us in the U.S. You see it all over the place here, and it's just super beautiful and a super great experience. And then when the sun rises, you get this right. You get a lake that would fit in like Wisconsin. You get mountains that are better than the Rockies in Colorado, and then you just get this like beautiful French style town with a distinctly Asian flair to it. Absolutely beautiful, and we would highly recommend heading out to Sapa for any digital nomads looking to do something a little bit different in Vietnam. And so if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one shortly.